Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Step Up to the Mic. This is the place for aspiring and established speakers to take the stage, to deliver their talks, and to bring them directly to you. Folks, we have a very special guest today. We're doing a interview today with someone who is an absolutely wonderfully established speaker. He is a pro, and I hope that all of his words of wisdom are able to help you folks in your journey to become speakers, to get on stages, and maybe even get paid for it one day. We have a fantastic guy with us today. He is a speaker, he's a trainer, he's a coach, he's an author. Please welcome Danny Brassell. Danny, how you doing, brother?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me, Rory. More importantly, thanks for spreading some joy and wisdom around the world. We need a lot more of you.
I'm trying my best. I appreciate that very much. All right, Danny, I mean, I could list your accomplishments for another 10 or 15 minutes, but why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do, brother?
Well, Rory, if I was going to write an autobiography, it would probably be called Pivots because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. 30 years ago, I was a journalist covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily, and one editor offered me the city beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So, Rory, I became an educator for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay.
For the money.
And I actually fell in love with teaching. I've taught all age levels from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam, and we lost everything. And I could give you
Oh,
the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from the experience. First of all, my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer and she stood right by me. She's incredible. Second of all, I learned that money's not everything because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people because if I was somebody who saw what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize unless you know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess it took a catastrophe. But the more I read my Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And fifth, I didn't want to file bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to earn this much more money this year. And so I started speaking on the side and I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, Rory, he gave me a much higher number and I hit that number right on the number. So in year three, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, during one of the worst economic downturns in American history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually attracted the attention of some pretty famous people and companies who asked me to coach them. And I have to confess, Rory, I resisted coaching for a long time because you need to know this about me. I have a very high standard for my students. I will not let you fail. I will be on your back, holding you accountable until you succeed. Well, now that I work primarily with entrepreneurs and executives and business owners, I find that they're highly motivated. They do the work, and it's probably been the most gratifying thing I've ever done in my entire life. So, how's that for a long answer to your short question?
I think it's fantastic. So, all right, what you're coaching is you're coaching people on how to put together their speeches and how to get into public speaking. Am I correct?
Well, not actually. The majority, I do work with some speakers. You have to bear with me. My business, I have two business partners. I call us the professor, the performer, and the producer because my background is in academia. Coach Jimmy was a Broadway actor, and Dave Ward, he's a an attorney. And if you ask Jimmy who we work with, he'll give you the names of every single famous person and company we've ever worked with. I'm a lot more discreet than that. I always believe in just discretion, not telling anybody. But gosh, and now have gone so long on my answer, I don't even remember the original quite. Oh, so yeah, we've worked with some we've worked with some speakers, but the majority of our clients are business people who want to grow their business through speaking. But the principles that we teach them are the same principles that any really effective speaker should be using because there's a difference between delivering a really good talk and a very intentional talk. And so we work with people that love to brag to us that they got a standing ovation or that people think they're a great speaker. I'm like, that's all fine and good. But to me, an effective presentation doesn't just move hearts, it also moves the needle. We only evaluate your effectiveness in one way and one way only. how many people in your audience are deciding to take that next step with you? And I mean,
Mm.
it can be an unpaid next step, like subscribe to my podcast or vote for me. It can be a paid, more typically, it's a paid offer, like buy my product or invest in my coaching services. But we want to know our numbers and understand how many people in your audience are deciding, hey, Rory's pretty attractive. I want a second date.
Could happen. Yeah. All right, gotcha. You said there's a difference between a good speech and a intentional one.
Yeah.
For everybody listening, what is the difference in there, and why is that important?
Well, good speeches tell really good stories. Great speeches tell stories that actually get the audience to do what you want them to do. So I'll give you an example. I'm working with a nutritionist, Dr. Kathy, and she's a nutrition expert. She grew up with this intestinal disorder, and no doctor could cure it. Well, she cured it, and so now her offer is she has a 90-day program for women that suffer from the same affliction,
Mm.
and that's where she was ending her presentation. I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! You're ending with the call to action. That's not what you need to do." So in the structure that Coach Jimmy and I teach our people, you have to bear with me. I'm a former teacher, Rory. So everything I do either rhymes or it's alliterative. So we have the
That's great.
process. So we start with clarity, and then once we write your speech, we have to connect with the audience, teach them meaningful content, have one clear call to action, and finally have an emotional close. And so with Kathy, I was making the point that every audience has what I'm going to call the Joe Friday and the Julia Roberts. So we'll say it's a married couple. So Joe Friday is usually the husband. He's sitting there with his arms crossed thinking, how much is this going to cost? What do I got to do? How long does it take? And an effective presentation makes sure to answer all those questions. So Joe Friday has an answer to all those questions. But if you end on your call to action, you're ignoring potentially 50% of your audience, which is Julia Roberts, which we'll say is the wife. Julia Roberts, she doesn't care what you're selling. She just wants to feel good. I listen to Rory's podcast because he makes me feel good all the time. And so the flaw with Dr. Kathy's presentation is she was just ending on the Joe Friday. And I said, audiences don't make decisions based on facts. They make it based on emotions. You have to end on an emotional high. And she's like, well, what do you want me to do? I said, well, one way we can do that was we can create a story as a metaphor. And she said, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do you want your audience to do? And she said, I want them to buy my program. I'm like, well, I know you want them to buy she has like a 90-day program for 1997. I'm like, I know you want them to do that, but what's the point that you really want to sink in? And we went back and forth for about 5 minutes. And finally she said, I want them to understand they can't do it on their own. I'm like, oh,
Mm.
you need to hire an expert story. And she's like, what's that? I'm like, I'll give you an example. I'll leave you with this. Many years ago, my wife and I had theater tickets. We were dressed to the nines, driving to the theater when we got a flat tire. My wife said, well, I'll call AAA. I'll get the tow truck. I'm like, you don't need to call AAA. I'm a man. I can fix a flat tire. So I got out of the car, opened up the trunk, and I got the spare tire, and then I got the pumper thing, and then I got the big jack kind of thing, and I started trying to undo the nuts on the tire. And basically, 27 minutes later, I had grease all over me. I had not fixed the flat tire. My wife standing beside the car with her arms crossed, shaking her head like I could have done so much better than this guy. Well, unbeknownst to me, she had called AAA 27 minutes earlier. This tow truck shows up, and this 17-year-old punk hops out of the tow truck and proceeds to fix my flat tire in 3 minutes. You know, I think there are times in life when all of us think we can do it on our own, but if you want to save time, you want to save money, you want to save a whole lot of headache and embarrassment, you hire an expert. And so what I've done now is I've created an intentional story that's going to sink into the audience's head as a metaphor. I've tried lots of different things before and none of them have worked. Maybe working with Dr. Kathy, she'll be able to show me how this will work. That's the power. That's the difference between telling just a random story and telling a story where there's an actual teaching point behind it.
Nice. Great example. Absolutely love that. And was that a true story? I got to know.
Of course, it's a true story.
That's why it rang true so well. Okay, I got it. That's why I
Well,
connected.
and that's a good point, Rory. So those are the best stories, those
Hmm.
little knickknacks. I've got a guy I'm coaching right now. and he's uncoachable. He's climbed the 7 highest peaks on every continent. He swam with sharks in Madagascar. He did the Iditarod in the North Pole. I'm like, nobody can relate to you. Nobody in your audience has climbed Mount Everest. But what everybody peed their pants when they were in first grade. That's a story I can relate to. And this is what we're trying to do is you can tell extraordinary stories, but they're not gonna hold any weight with your audience because your audience can't relate to them. You need stories that relate. And if you watch the best speakers, they're always really good at taking just random daily occurrences and turning them into these things that make you laugh or they move you to tears. That's what an effective presenter does.
That's wonderful. I love that example too. It's funny, just out of curiosity, the guy you were just talking about, his name's not George, is it?
No.
It's like sounds just like a guy I just interviewed a little while ago. But all right, that's wonderful. I I love the way that you put it together like that, and you make things. I assume this is how you coach,
Oh,
in
absolutely.
this very affable sort of connecting with everybody sort of way.
Oh man, life's too short, Rory. If you're not having fun, why are you doing? I mean, I think that's what separates us from a lot of these so-called speaking coaches. A lot of people, when they're training you how to speak, they want you to share your most tragic moment in your life. There's 3 reasons why I refuse to do that, Rory. First of all, the world just survived a global pandemic. Everybody's had a lot of bad stuff happen to them. I don't think we need another sad story. I think we need stories of hope that lift us up. Second of all, what Coach Jimmy and I teach our clients to do is to create what we call a well-crafted story. When politicians would call it a stump speech. Superhero movies, they call it your origin story. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. It doesn't matter what you call it. What this is a presentation that you're going to deliver again and again to introduce yourself to new audiences. Well, do you really want to talk about the worst moment of your life again and again? I mean, I have a friend, his daughter was killed in a school shooting. He's delivered that speech over 1,000 times. I have no idea how he does. I could not talk about the worst day of my life again and again. And third, this is where people get angry with me. I have one objective when I'm on stage. I want you to leave feeling better than when you came in. I want you laughing, smiling, happy. I personally think there's something admirable about that as an objective. I believe these people that tell the same sad story again and again, by the 20th time they're telling it, those are now crocodile tears and now they're being manipulative. And I'm not saying it's not an effective sales strategy. It's actually a very effective sales strategy. But I personally don't want to have to take a shower after I get off stage because I just manipulated my audience. There are actual ethical ways to get people to want to take the next step to do business with you. So the short answer to your question is, man, life's too short, man. You should be having fun. And especially most of the people I work with, they're terrified to be on stage or they don't want to go on stage. I'm like, well, we're going to make it fun. So this isn't something you dread. It's something you look forward to.
Sure. Now you learn all this, I assume, from your own personal experience. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
What got you on stage the first time?
What's that?
What got you on stage the first time?
Financial necessity.
More honesty. I love it. Okay.
Well, so I know a lot of your audience, they're trying to become speakers. And so people always ask me, well, where do I start? So I'm going to give you a couple of strategies on how to start. Some people ask me for tips. I'm like, I give tips to waiters. I give strategies to people that are trying to become professionals. And so when I was starting out, whether I spoke a lot for free, but even if I speak for free, I always have a contract, a letter of agreement for the people I'm speaking to. And so in my contract, it would say, I will waive my $5,000 speaking fee. I wasn't making $5,000 back then. I will waive my $5,000 speaking fee in exchange for, and I had 10 items on my list. One, a video testimonial from the president of your organization. Two, 3 written testimonials from people in your audience. 3, referrals to 2 other organizations that could benefit from my speech. 4, if you are videotaping me, I want a copy of the videotape. 5, if your organization has a monthly newsletter, I want to be able to write a column in it for the next year. It was things like that. And Rory, honestly, I didn't know if anybody would do any of them. And everybody did at least one of them. And some people did all 10. And so I was able to build up a whole lot of testimonials and get referrals and things like that. Um, the other thing I do, I always tell people there's only 2 ways to get better as a speaker. First of all, you need to watch lots of speakers. I mean, I watch 10 speakers a day. I watch politicians. I watch comedians. I watch televangelists. I watch them in front of big groups, in front of small groups, in front of men, in front of women. Here, I'll give a ninja strategy to your audience. I watch a lot of televised award shows, and people always ask me, why do you do that? I'm like, well, when the person wins the Academy Award, they only have 45 seconds to connect with their audience. I want to see how they use their time. Now, most people waste their time. They get out there like, I want to thank God, I want to thank the Academy. It's stupid. Nobody's paying attention. But every now and then a person aces it. So a few years ago, there was a guy by the name of Joe Walker who won the Academy Award for Best Film Editing. Now, this is Hollywood, the Academy Awards. The important people are in the front of the room, the actors. And the camera is scanning the crowd. You can see it's film editing. Nobody's paying attention at all. Joe Walker gets on stage. He's British. He speaks very slowly and deliberately. He says, a lot of people don't know this, but when phrased properly, the term Academy Award nominee can be used as an insult. Well, now the camera's scanning the crowd. You see people leaning in like, what's he talking about? He continues, he's like, for example, yesterday I got in an argument with my 17-year-old daughter, and she said, well, Academy Award nominee Joe Walker. All of a sudden, you see everybody laughing hysterically. He gets off stage. Denzel Washington wants to meet him. Sandra Bullock wants to meet him. Brad Pitt wants to meet him. Time magazine said he was one of the highlights of the Academy Awards. Well done, Mr. Walker. That's how
Yeah.
you use your time. So the first way you get better at speaking is you watch a lot of speakers. The second way, I've been blessed with lots of wonderful coaches and mentors throughout my career. One of my mentors was a guy named Jim Rohn, and Jim used to say, you can't pay other people to do your push-ups. Translation, you got to do the reps, man.
Yeah.
Like even the smallest towns in America have a Lions Club, an Optimist Club, a Kiwanis Club, a Rotary Club. They got Women's Club. They got Chamber of Commerce. They got schools. They got churches, synagogues, temples. You know, get out there. You got to get out there. I mean, at the very least, get on YouTube so people can find you somewhere. You need to be out there. And so if you're just starting out as a speaker, then the very first two things I would implore you to do is always have a written agreement for every event so that you can get something out of it, even if you're not getting a paycheck. And just because a person doesn't, I had a woman the other day. She said, "Oh, well, that was a waste of time. I didn't get any clients out of it." And I said, "Try adding the word yet, because you have no idea." I just did last month. I did an event in Montevideo, Uruguay. This woman has been on my email list for 11 years, and she booked me. And I was actually impressed with myself. I'm like, well, that was persistence. I finally got the gig. That was pretty good.
I bet.
So make sure you have the letter of agreement. And then secondly, you got to get out there and speaking. It's kind of like, I mean, think about your podcast, Roy. I guarantee you the first time you did this podcast, you stunk. And the second time you did the podcast, you stunk. But you didn't stink as bad as the first time. And now that you've been doing it for a while, you're a finely tuned machine. This comes like it's second nature. Speaking is a skill. It can be taught. I tell this to people all the time. I'm like, you don't worry. The more you get reps, it's kind of like my youngest daughter. She's learning how to drive right now, and she's so cute. Whenever she gets in the car, she's adjusting her mirrors, and she puts her hands on the steering wheel at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Rory, a year from now, she'll be driving with one hand, eating a Big Mac, flipping on the radio, putting on her lipstick. It's because she'll get used to it, and you get comfortable the more you do something.
Yeah. I love that. You got to do the reps. There's no way around it. So
Yes.
100%. You're an author also,
Mm-hmm.
and you give a real strong nod to a guy that you and I both know, Paul Harvey. You want to speak to that? Let everybody know what you've been doing there.
Yeah, I taught all age levels, but when I was teaching middle school, I was the only teacher in my school that none of my students ever showed up tardy to class. And the reason was because I always started off class with a Paul Harvey story. You and I grew up with Paul Harvey. When I was a kid, he'd come on the radio every day at 12:15. He'd be like, I'm Paul Harvey with the rest of the story, and for 5 minutes, he's describing a person or a place or a thing. You're trying to figure out what's he talking about. And my students, they absolutely love those stories. But the problem is a lot of Paul Harvey stories are about like Fred Astaire and Sears Roebuck. Well, kids today don't even know anything about that. And so I wrote the book Leadership Begins with Motivation as an homage to Paul Harvey, but this includes stories of more contemporary people. like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and stuff like that. But then after I wrote the book, Rory, I read it and I'm like, huh, that's interesting. Completely unintentionally, a lot of my stories in this book are of white male Americans. And so the last book I wrote is called Misfits and Crackpots. And these stories are primarily of women and minorities and international people that did extraordinary things around the world. It was actually probably the most fun I've ever had writing a book because there was just stories that I had never heard of. I was like, oh, well, that's a pretty cool story. I just think we were talking about this off air. Like, there's just so much negativity in the world. And there was a great speaker, Keith Harrell. He's no longer with us. And he had a line. He said, a lot of people say garbage in, garbage out. That's not right. Garbage in, garbage stays. But I also believe you put positive things in your head and that stays. And this is my belief system as a teacher. I used to always look at the kids, say, hey, sometimes you need somebody else to believe in you before you believe in yourself. I believe in all of you. They only give me the best and the brightest. Let's go out and make this world a better place. I believe you say that repeatedly to a person, they start actually believing in themselves. And that's important. I think all of us need a little bit more self-belief nowadays.
I could not agree with you more. To that end, you are offering something to folks by way of a free download, a storytelling blueprint, so maybe they can sort of dip their toe in the water, get started with this a little bit.
Yeah, as a thank you to you, Rory, and your audience for having to bear with me on all my stories, I wanted to show everybody how to create your own stories. So if you go to freestoryguide.com, guide like a tour guide, freestoryguide.com, we're going to give you your own well-crafted story blueprint. What this is the actual process that Coach Jimmy and I take our clients through on how to create your well-crafted story. What this does for you is it takes the guesswork out of where do I put this and why am I putting this here? And what this means for you is you now have an actual system that's going to convert your audiences into actual clients. You can get that at freestoryguide.com. And again, Rory, thanks so much for having me. I just adore your show. I love what you're doing and what you're all about. And I'll support you any way I can, my friend.
I appreciate that, Danny. Thanks very much. Um, you on the socials, can people reach you there or just want to go through the website?
Well, so this is actually a good point, Rory. So this is actually one of the things I try to teach my clients is again, former teacher, choices confuse and cause you to lose. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make in presentations is they have multiple calls to action. It just confuses people. The example I give is if you look at the largest grocery store chains in America, like the Krogers, the Publix, the Smiths, the Ralphs, the Safeway, none of them are the number one grocery store chain in America. The number one grocery store chain in America based on volume is Trader Joe's. And the reason is when you go into one of these major supermarkets to get mustard, there's 38 different types of mustard on the shelf. When you go into Trader Joe's, there's one. It's called mustard. They made the choice for you. And so it's a very important teaching point for your audience. I was on a podcast the other day, and at the end of the podcast, the hostess, she said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure you like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star review. I'm like, you just told your audience 3 different things. They're not going to do any of them. Like, focus on one. It's like if I'm working with a politician, there's 2 types of speeches, and they're very different. One is a fundraising dinner. So your ask is for money. That's very different than I'm asking for your vote. Those are 2 very different actions. So I'm not giving everybody my social media. They can find me if they want. But if you go to freestoryguide.com, I am sure that will put you on some email list that will communicate with you for at least the next 11 years.
There you go. All right. Just teaching lessons till the end. You are truly a teacher. I absolutely love it. Well, we'll make sure that stuff is in the show notes. Speaker, trainer, coach, and apparently the Jim Carrey with a Ph.D. Also, do you want to tell us what that's about real quick before we let you go? Because that's on a lot of stuff that I've seen with your name on it. The Jim Carrey with
Yeah,
a
there was
Ph.D.
just
thing.
yeah, there was a couple of teachers that were forced to go to one of my trainings, and they were mad at me afterwards. Like, I brought all this work to do, and I couldn't do any of it because I was actually entertained the entire time. They're like, "You're Jim Carrey with a PhD." Like, this is the, and so I'm like, "Ooh, that's a good tagline. I'll start using that one."
I like it. I like it. All right. Sounds good. All right. Danny Brassell, brother, thank you for being here today and for giving everything you did to our audience. It was a lot of fun and I really appreciate you stopping in.
Thank you, Rory. God bless.
You too. Folks, that's been another spectacular episode of Step Up to the Mic. If you're an aspiring or current speaker and you want to bring your talk to the masses, message us today. Never stop talking and let us help you to step up to the mic.